Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going on a cinematic descent into the unseen architecture of our reality. Think of this as a highly immersive journey, acting as your personal guide to the invisible forces that literally govern our day-to-day lives. We're going to travel from the very physical data lines resting at the bottom of our oceans, up to the abstract mathematics securing them, and then all the way down into the seriously murky depths of social engineering and literal invisible weaponry. We're unpacking some massive, complex ideas today to show you exactly how the unseen absolutely shapes the scene. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. Think of this like an iceberg model. We'll start at the physical surface with the hidden data infrastructure, dip into bias and predictive algorithms, explore quantum security, and then plunge straight down into economic automation, the conquest of our minds, and finally, literal invisible weapons.
Section 1. The hidden data infrastructure, the physical surface of our digital world.
To start our descent, we are beginning right at the physical surface of our digital world, and we're going to sink down layer by layer. Now, the internet usually feels entirely invisible, right? Like it's just this magic thing floating around in the cloud. But get this, it's a staggering statistic. 95% of all international data travels not through the air and not through satellites, but physically under the ocean. Every email, every text, every banking transaction, it's all moving through deep water.
I want you to imagine over 400 active cables as the vital yet completely invisible arteries of the modern globe. They span a mind-blowing 1.3 million kilometers across the ocean floor. These are the world's real information superhighways, just lying there silently in the dark.
Section 2. Bias and predictive algorithms, just below the surface.
So, we've established the physical cables, but what about the massive ocean of information flowing inside them? This quote from Tristan Harris perfectly captures what's going on. Magicians start by looking for blind spots, so they can influence what people do without them even realizing it. Predictive algorithms act like these covert digital crystal balls, constantly mining our data to shape our choices entirely from the shadows. This algorithmic bias in action is actually pretty wild. Target famously used a predictive algorithm to figure out a customer was pregnant based purely on her subtle changes in shopping habits, often before her own family even knew. They actually had to disguise these targeted promotions among completely random ads just to avoid creeping people out, because, nothing says congratulations quite like covertly targeted diaper coupons. Meanwhile, Amazon's algorithm engaged in something called prime lining, where it excluded same-day delivery from certain minority neighborhoods simply because the system used zip codes as a proxy for race. It's an invisible, systemic bias hard-coded directly into the machine.
Section 3. Quantum security and wave mechanics, visualizing the abstract.
Now we're moving past traditional algorithms and into a highly abstract realm. What we're talking about here is the excitation of phase states within higher-order tensors. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but think of it like tuning a guitar. Only instead of plucking strings, you are plucking the fundamental frequencies of reality itself. These complex wave filters, manipulating the real and imaginary components in these frequencies, will absolutely dictate the future of cybersecurity and encryption.
And that brings us to a really critical pivot point. If our entire digital lives are built on these invisible waves, deep-sea submarine cables, and predictive algorithms, what happens when those exact systems are engineered not just for connection, but for control? Let's take a deep breath and descend further into the deep water.
Section 4. Economic automation and control, the deep water.
Here, we're looking at a purported 1986 manual titled Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. It presents itself as an introductory programming manual for social engineering. Its core premise is pretty chilling. It argues that a society can be completely quantified, predicted, and treated exactly like an automated machine, using economic manipulation as the primary weapon.
The document actually maps economic structures directly to electronic circuit diagrams. It literally treats the economy as an electrical grid where capital acts as the voltage and the general public is treated as mere capacitance. It is a stunningly cold, purely mathematical approach to human existence.
So the absolutely crucial question is, how do they test this automated machine? Well, the manual outlines something called economic shock testing. It uses a very specific analogy, treating the economy like an aircraft frame. To test a physical frame, you fire a projectile at it. In the economic model, that projectile is an artificial price shock. Then, you carefully monitor the recoil and vibration of the public. It's a calculated, methodical way to test the resilience and the breaking point of the working class.
According to the document, the absolute primary strategy to maintain this invisible economic control is diversion. To keep the public from ever realizing they are essentially parts in an automated circuit, the system has to keep them constantly distracted with media, entertainment, and matters of absolutely no real importance. Because at the end of the day, an uninformed and distracted public simply cannot fight an invisible war.
Section 5. The conquest of our minds. The abyss.
Now we are moving away from economic manipulation and plunging straight into the deliberate targeting of human cognition itself. You see, cognitive warfare isn't about destroying physical buildings or capturing land. As outlined in modern defense research, it's about utilizing decision-making overload to hack the human mind. The goal is to induce cognitive collapse and entropy. It is fundamentally about destroying our very ability to process reality.
While traditional physical warfare destroys roads and bridges, cognitive warfare completely alters narratives and paralyzes your ability to even make a decision. And researchers are noting that since 2022, the massive explosion of consumer AI has allowed this invisible warfare to shift from localized, small-scale efforts into a terrifying new era of mass-producing psychological imbalance.
Section 6. Literal invisible weapons, weaponizing the air. There is a very real chance you walked past a weapon operating at exactly this frequency today. 17.4 kilohertz is the frequency of what are known as mosquito devices. These are these small, unassuming boxes installed in public spaces that emit a high-pitched sonic screech. Now, if you're over 25, you probably can't even hear it, but to young people, it is absolutely agonizing. It's a literal, invisible sonic fence being used to weaponize public spaces and biohack our environments to purposefully reject a specific demographic. And this kind of invisible manipulation scales up rapidly. We see it in GPS spoofing, like the instance when a US drone was completely tricked into landing in Iran just because its navigation waves were hijacked. And we see it in those sonic weapons zoning our public spaces with invisible pain. Whether you are targeting machines or human beings, unseen frequencies are definitively the new battlefield.
This concept escalates dramatically to directed energy weapons, or DEWs, and the highly mysterious Havana syndrome. Diplomats have reported experiencing this intense, completely invisible pressure, strange grating sounds, and then just devastating physical symptoms: severe nausea, inner ear disruption, debilitating dizziness, and intense cognitive fog. They were essentially attacked by something they could neither see nor hear.
And these events aren't just isolated to foreign embassies. There are reports from Venezuela describing situations where the air suddenly just felt thick and heavy. The accounts claim that a narrow band of pulsed energy was used to directly target soldiers' nervous systems. Hundreds of men supposedly dropped to the ground, vomiting, completely unable to stand. They were neutralized instantly without a single bullet ever being fired. The air itself literally became the weapon.
Which really leaves us with this final, lingering thought. When the battlefield is completely invisible, hidden down in ocean cables, buried in predictive algorithms, wired into economic circuits, and pulsing through energy waves, and the weapons themselves are entirely silent, how do you know if you're already in the crosshairs? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the unseen architecture of our world leaves you asking some big questions and maybe looking just a little bit closer at the invisible systems surrounding us every single day.